I never imagined that a single forgotten key could flip my entire life upside down. But that night, cold, windy, and already awful before it even began, became the night everything changed. Not because I was locked out. Not because my phone battery was dying. Not even because my ex had decided to ruin my week one last time. No. Because the man who lived 3 floors above me, a man I had only ever seen in passing, turned out to be far more dangerous, far more powerful, and far more life-altering than I ever could have guessed. My name is Lena Hart, and if you told me a year ago that a mafia boss would be the one to save me, I would have laughed. Or cried. Or both. That Friday had already been exhausting. A double shift at the events agency I worked for, 3 back-to-back client meetings, and a chair that squeaked every time I moved. By the time I got home at 10:17 p.m., I was freezing, starving, and ready to collapse into bed face first. My hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the walls themselves are tired. I reached into my tote bag, one of those flimsy canvas ones you get for free at conferences, and felt around blindly for my keys. Wallet, notebook, lip balm, phone, receipts, more receipts, no keys. My stomach sank. I stopped digging and crouched down, dumping half the contents of the bag onto the hallway floor. Makeup pouch, charger, gum wrappers, an old Starbucks straw, don't judge me, still nothing. I checked the front pocket, the side pocket, the secret zipper section I forget even exists. Still nothing. That's when reality punched me. I didn't have my keys. I closed my eyes, inhaled, exhaled, prayed to whatever cosmic force was listening. Slowly, I stood up and tried the door anyway, just in case I had magically unlocked it earlier without remembering. I hadn't. Locked. Solid. Unmoving. I whispered, no, not tonight. Then I remembered something far worse. My ex, Ryan, had borrowed my spare key earlier that week to pick up his leftover things. I only agreed because I thought it'd be easier than fighting. I hadn't talked to him since the breakup 3 months ago, and I didn't want to. But the spare key was still with him. Because he forgot to return it. Because he got too busy. Because he was always too busy. Except when he was sabotaging something. I texted him anyway. Hey, I'm locked out. Do you still have my key? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally he replied. Ryan, yeah. Sorry. Not home now. Good luck though. Good luck? Good luck? I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat down on the hallway floor, my back pressed to my door and rubbed my temples. I felt like the universe was having fun at my expense. I checked the battery. 7%. Perfect. I Googled locksmiths. The first 3 were closed. The 4th said earliest appointment was morning. The 5th quoted $480. I laughed. Not a normal laugh, a slightly hysterical, I'm losing my mind kind of laugh. My building, despite being old and slightly creepy, was supposed to have 24/7 maintenance. But, of course, the emergency line went straight to voicemail. I considered calling my coworker, Jenna, but she lived 40 minutes away. Then I considered a hotel, but I was wearing the same clothes I'd worked 13 hours in and had zero money to waste on a last-minute booking. I was just about to Google how to break into your own apartment without going to jail when the elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and out stepped a man. Tall, dark-haired, black coat that looked expensive enough to pay my rent twice over. Face carved from stone, sharp jaw, strong cheekbones, the kind of intimidating presence that makes you straighten your posture automatically. I knew who he was, sort of. The man from the penthouse floor. The man who lived in 15A. His name, according to building gossip and a few overheard comments from the doorman, was Adrian Vescary. I'd seen him twice before in the elevator. Once at 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept in years. Another time dressed in all black, talking quietly into his phone in a language I didn't recognize. Residents whispered things about him. Things like old money, or don't mess with him, or that's the guy the entire staff treats like royalty. But I'd never actually spoken to him. Tonight, though, I didn't have a choice. His gaze landed on me immediately, assessing, analyzing. Not judgmental, just sharp, like he didn't miss details. You're sitting on the floor, he said eventually, voice deep, calm, slightly accented. Yes, I replied brilliantly. His eyes flicked to the scattered bag contents around me. You're locked out. I nodded. Unfortunately. He moved closer, not predatorily, just purposefully. His presence felt controlled, like he knew exactly what he was doing at all times. Do you have someone coming to help? He asked. No. Locksmiths are either closed or want half my paycheck. His brows lifted slightly, like that irritated him more than it irritated me. And your spare key? He asked. With my ex, I said before thinking, which was a mistake. A pause. A dangerous pause. Something flashed behind his eyes. Disapproval? Annoyance? Something darker, but it disappeared as fast as it came. He slid one hand into his coat pocket, then said, You shouldn't sit in a hallway this late. It isn't safe. I laughed weakly. Well, my options are limited. Another beat. And then so casually he might as well have been offering directions, he said. Come upstairs. You can wait in my place until we sort this out. My heart jumped into my throat. Go with a stranger? A powerful, intimidating stranger? A man whose presence filled the entire hallway without trying. Every rational warning bell went off. But then he added, softer, I won't touch you. I won't make you uncomfortable. But I'm not leaving you down here alone. And the way he said it, calm, firm, certain, something inside me trusted him before my brain found the words to question it. I gathered my scattered items and stood up. Are you sure? I don't want to bother you. You're not a bother. He said it in a way no one had said it to me in years. He turned toward the elevator and pressed the button. When the doors opened, he gestured for me to step in first. As we rose to the top floor, the air humming around us, I kept thinking one thing. I had no idea who this man really was, but I was about to find out. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would be the same after tonight. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt endless, even though it was only 15 floors. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was him, standing beside me, tall and composed, hands in his coat pockets like he had nothing in this world to fear. Meanwhile, I was worrying about everything. My apartment, my missing key, my dying phone, and most of all, the fact that I was willingly following a stranger into the penthouse. But Adrian didn't look at me like I was prey. He didn't smile or smirk or do anything that would make the situation feel wrong. He just existed in that quiet, steady way that made me feel as if he could stand in a burning building and somehow the flames wouldn't touch him. When the elevator finally chimed at the top floor, he stepped out first, glancing down the hallway with an alertness I didn't quite understand at the time. Like he wasn't just checking for neighbors, he was checking for threats. The penthouse door was sleek, dark wood, with a keypad instead of a lock. Adrian punched in a code faster than I could memorize it and pushed the door open. After you, he said. I hesitated only a heartbeat before stepping inside. The first thing that hit me was the silence, a kind of luxurious quiet that comes from thick walls and expensive insulation. Then the smell, clean, warm, faintly smoky, like cedar wood and something darker beneath it. And then the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the far wall, revealing a glowing skyline that made my heart stop. The entire city looked like it had been poured out in light. Cars crawled like tiny sparks. Buildings shimmered. The river reflected everything like liquid glass. Wow, I whispered before I could stop myself. Adrian closed the door with a soft click. Sit wherever you like. I hovered awkwardly near the entrance until he took off his coat and draped it neatly over a chair. Without the coat, he looked even more sharp. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, showing veins and strength that seemed carved rather than grown. I'll get you something warm to drink, he said. Tea, coffee, wine. I blinked. Wine sounds nice, actually. If it's not too much trouble. It isn't. He moved into the kitchen with quiet confidence. No fumbling, no hesitation. Every gesture precise, efficient, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. While he poured the wine, I allowed myself to explore the living room with my eyes. The penthouse was elegant without being showy. Everything was black, gray, or deep wood. The furniture was modern, but lived in, not cold. There were books on the shelves, not just decorative ones, but real ones, their spines worn. A chessboard sat by the window mid-game. On the far table, a single glass vase held white roses, fresh and perfect. There were no family photos, no personal decorations, nothing sentimental. It was beautiful and lonely, a strange combination. Here. I turned as Adrian handed me a glass. The wine was deep red, almost black, smelling rich and expensive. Thank you, I said. He nodded once and motioned to the large couch by the window. We sat with a respectful distance between us that somehow felt intentional. He wasn't crowding me, wasn't trying to impress me, just giving me space to breathe. Tell me what happened, he said, voice low but steady. I took a slow sip of wine, God, it was good, and exhaled. I had my keys with me this morning, but at some point today, I must have left them in my office, or dropped them, or lost them in a rideshare. I'm not even sure. And the spare. My ex has it. My voice tightened around the word. He said he'd give it back, but he never did. Adrian's eyes sharpened, not with curiosity, but with something colder. Protective, almost. He refused to come bring it to you, he asked. He sent a very helpful good luck text. I forced a laugh. So clearly he's thriving. Adrian didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. Instead, he asked, has he ever made you feel unsafe? The question hit harder than I expected. No, I said. Then paused. I mean emotionally, yes. Not physically. He wasn't great at being a decent human being, but he wasn't dangerous. Adrian studied me for a moment, as if deciding whether to believe me. He sounds irresponsible, he said finally. That's a very nice way of putting it. His jaw tightened just slightly, the only sign of irritation. Not at me, at my ex, apparently. He took a sip of wine, watching me over the rim of the glass. His eyes were dark, unreadable but not unkind. Do you have anyone you can call? A friend? A coworker? My phone's at 4%. I held it up. And the only nearby friend is out of town. So you have nowhere to go. I swallowed. Not really. He leaned back, one arm resting on the couch. His movements were smooth, controlled, like he had spent his entire life making sure nothing, absolutely nothing, caught him off guard. You can stay here tonight, he said. I choked a little on the wine. Here. Yes. In the penthouse. Yes. I blinked at him. Why? For the first time since meeting him, something like amusement flickered across his mouth. Not quite a smile, but a ghost of one. Because you're tired, he said. Cold. Locked out. And I'm not in the habit of leaving people stranded. That's very generous. It's practical. He looked at me like the answer was obvious. You shouldn't wander the city at night alone. And I don't trust the hallway either. I stared at him. You don't trust the hallway? His eyes darkened, not with fear, but with certainty. This building isn't as safe as people think. A chill ran through me, though his tone remained completely calm. So you offer shelter to random neighbors? I asked. Only to the ones who look like they might fall asleep on the floor outside their apartment. I laughed softly. Wow, what an honor. His gaze softened at the edge. You don't need to be nervous. I won't bother you. I'm not nervous, I lied. He looked unconvinced, but didn't press. Instead, he stood. There's a guest room down the hall. Clean sheets. And if you want more wine, help yourself. I stood too, holding the glass carefully. Adrian, thank you. He paused, turning his head slightly. You're welcome, Lena. The way he said my name, smooth, low, like he tasted it first, made something flutter unexpectedly in my chest. I followed him as he led me toward the guest room. But halfway there, I noticed something I hadn't before. A door. Heavy. Reinforced. With steel hinges and a lock panel unlike anything I'd seen in a home. What's that? I asked without thinking. He stopped, turned toward me, and for the first time since I'd met him, his eyes shifted, not dark, not cold, but guarded. Nothing you need to worry about, he said quietly. A strange shiver crawled up my spine. In that moment, I knew, without understanding how, that whatever was behind that door wasn't normal. And Adrian Vescari was far more dangerous than he appeared. The guest room was nothing like I expected. I thought it would be cold or unused, the kind of spare space rich people forget they have. But the moment Adrian opened the door, warm amber light spilled over a room that felt cared for. Soft gray bedding, a window overlooking the river, a nightstand with a small lamp shaped like a candle flame, a folded blanket at the foot of the bed, and a single framed painting. Mountains at sunrise, soft colors blending into each other like a breath. This didn't look like the room of a man who didn't feel things. But then again, everything about Adrian already contradicted what I'd assumed. "You can sleep here," he said, stepping aside so I could enter. "Bathroom is across the hall. Extra towels under the sink." I nodded, stepping in. The room felt safe. Too safe. Like my body had been waiting for a place to rest and finally found it. "You sure you don't mind?" I asked, turning to him. His expression didn't change. If I minded, I wouldn't offer. Fair point. I set my half-finished wine glass on the dresser. He watched me do it, his gaze lingering, thoughtful, like he was cataloging every small detail of who I was. "If you need anything," he added, "my room is the first door on the left." I hadn't asked, but the information felt oddly intimate. "Okay," I said softly. He nodded once, turned, and walked away. His footsteps were quiet, controlled, barely audible against the hardwood. When he reached the end of the hallway, he paused. "Sleep well, Lena." Then he disappeared around the corner. The moment he was gone, my shoulders sagged. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been. My mind trapped between gratitude, caution, and a strange curiosity I didn't want to name. I sank onto the bed and exhaled. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something warm, like sunlight lingering in fabric. My phone buzzed weakly in my hand. 3% battery. A single new message. I opened it without thinking. "Ryan, so you're just ignoring me now?" Figures. Typical. I locked my phone immediately. I didn't want his voice in my head. Not tonight. Not in this place where everything, every breath, every sound, felt calmer than anything I'd known in months. I plugged my dying phone into the charger Adrian had left by the nightstand. How did he have everything ready like that and stretched out on the bed? But sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying the same things. Adrian's steady voice, the way he moved, quietly but always alert, the heavy, reinforced door in the hallway, the guarded look in his eyes when I'd asked about it, and then the skyline, the wine, the warmth of his presence. Who was he, really? I was still asking myself that question when I heard it. A sound, very soft, barely audible, like a faint thud from the other side of the penthouse. I sat up slowly, held my breath. There it was again. Another sound. Not loud, not panicked, but deliberate. My heartbeat picked up. Maybe it was the building settling. Maybe it was someone in the upstairs loft. Or maybe it had come from behind that reinforced door. I slid off the bed, feet silent on the floor, and opened the guest room door a crack. The hallway was dim. Only the faintest glow from the living room spilled across the floor, illuminating the edges of the walls, the frames of the doors. I stepped out, moving quietly. Ridiculously quietly, like I was sneaking around someone else's life. Adrian's room door was closed. But the sound came again, soft, muffled, like something shifting behind thick walls. I shouldn't investigate. I knew that. I was a guest, a stranger, and whatever secrets this man kept were none of my business. But curiosity and unease tugged me forward anyway. My feet carried me down the hallway until I stood in front of the reinforced door. Up close, it felt even more intimidating. The wood wasn't just wood, it was reinforced with metal beneath, heavy and solid. There was no simple doorknob, only a keypad and a fingerprint scanner. Expensive, secure, purposeful. I lifted my hand as if touching the door might tell me something. But before I could, a voice came from behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around so fast my balance wobbled. Adrian stood in the shadows of the hallway, half his face lit by the faint glow, half hidden. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd run a hand through it. His expression was unreadable but not angry, just serious. "I heard something," I blurted out before I could think. I wasn't trying to be nosy, "You heard nothing." His voice was calm, Final, but not dismissive, more like a quiet warning. I'm sorry, I said, stepping back. I shouldn't have left the room. That's not what I meant. He moved closer, slow and steady. You're not my prisoner. You can go anywhere you like. Except here, I whispered, nodding toward the door. His eyes locked onto mine. Especially here, he corrected quietly. I swallowed. Is it dangerous? He studied me, the lines around his eyes tightening just a fraction. Then he exhaled. Not to you, he said. Never to you. The way he said it, calm, unwavering, certain, gave me goosebumps. But to others, I pressed gently. A long pause. His jaw flexed. His gaze sharpened. Yes, he said finally. I backed away slowly, pulse pounding. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. I turned to leave, but he stepped closer, not blocking my way, just standing near enough that I felt the heat of him. You're curious, he said, his voice almost amused. Curiosity is fine, but do not open doors that aren't meant for you. I nodded. Okay. And Lena? Yes. His gaze softened, just barely. You don't have to be afraid here. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. He guided me back toward the guest room with a gentle gesture, and I followed, my heartbeat slowly returning to normal. As I reached the door, he added quietly, Sleep. Tomorrow we'll get your key situation sorted out. Okay, I whispered. He started to walk away, but something made me ask, Adrian, what do you do? He didn't turn, but his pause was answer enough. A heavy, loaded silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I handle things in this city that most people don't want to know about. Then he walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the penthouse, leaving me standing there, breath caught in my throat. In that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever Adrian Vescari was, he was no ordinary man, and my life had just stepped into something I was nowhere near prepared for. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was spilling through the curtains in molten gold, painting the guest room in warm summer tones. For a moment, I forgot where I was. I stretched, blinked, and then reality slid into place like a puzzle piece snapping where it belonged. I wasn't in my apartment. I wasn't in my bed. I was in his penthouse. And everything about last night, the wine, the view, the reinforced door, the quiet warning in his voice, crashed into my memory all at once. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes. The room was silent, peaceful. It smelled faintly of fresh linen and lavender. My phone sat on the nightstand, fully charged. A tiny relief. But then I saw the notification. Ryan, don't ignore me. I'm coming over. We need to talk. My entire chest tightened. I checked the time, 9:12 a.m. He sent the message at 1:47 a.m. A tremor rolled through me. Ryan was unpredictable when desperate, irrational, stubborn. The idea of him showing up at my building made my stomach twist. I got out of bed and wrapped the blanket around my shoulders, suddenly cold. Quietly, I cracked open the door and peeked into the hallway. No sound, no movement, just warm sunlight spilling in from the windows at the far end. I stepped out cautiously, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. The penthouse felt different in daylight, less mysterious, more breathtaking. The skyline glittered like diamonds, tiny boats cutting through the river below. The sofa looked impossibly plush. The kitchen gleamed. I found him there, standing by the stove, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, steam curling up from a pan. He looked nothing like the intimidating figure from last night. He looked human, comfortable, like a man who belonged to quiet weekends and warm kitchens, not secrecy and reinforced doors. He glanced over when he heard me. You're awake, he said, voice still thick with mourning. Yeah, I replied softly. Come, sit. It wasn't a command, more like an invitation wrapped in warmth. I sat at the island counter while he plated what looked like eggs, toasted bread, and sautéed tomatoes. He slid the plate in front of me, then handed me a mug of coffee. Cream? Sugar. Black is fine, I said, though I usually drown my coffee in milk. Something about him made me want to look a little tougher than I was. He leaned against the counter opposite me, sipping his own coffee as he watched me take a bite. The food tasted far better than something so simple had any right to. This is incredible, I said. Good, he replied. You need to eat. The protective tone again. That's strange. Firm gentleness that felt like a blanket and a barrier at the same time. I tried to eat normally, but his eyes on me made my nerves buzz. Not because he was staring, but because he looked like he could see thoughts I didn't even say aloud. Finally, he spoke. You didn't sleep well. I blinked at him. How do you know? You look tired, he said simply. And you left your room around 3 a.m. Heat shot to my cheeks. You saw me. I heard you. He set down his mug. I checked the penthouse at night. Routine. Routine. I echoed. Yes. He paused. To make sure everything is as it should be. I swallowed. My curiosity pricked again. What exactly do you need to check for? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied me, measured me, like he was deciding whether I could handle the truth. Finally, he said, Not everyone in this city likes what I do. Something cold slid down my spine. And what do you do? I asked quietly. He didn't speak for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, very calmly, he said, I manage power. The kind people pretend doesn't exist. I froze, my fork covered above my plate. He continued drinking his coffee like he hadn't just said something that rewired the shape of my morning. Power. I repeated. Yes, he said. The kind that keeps dangerous men from becoming more dangerous. The kind that moves pieces on a chessboard most people don't even know they're standing on. My heart thumped loudly. Are you in trouble? I whispered. His eyes lifted to mine. No, he said. But trouble listens to me. The room felt suddenly too quiet. Too still. I opened my mouth, closed it again. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but didn't know which one was safe. Before I could speak, my phone buzzed again. Loud in the silence. Adrian's expression sharpened instantly. Who's that? He asked. I turned the screen so he could see the notification without reading the message itself. Ryan, I'm already on my way. Adrian put his mug down very deliberately. When was the first message? His tone dropped into something lower, far more controlled. Last night, I said. Around 2. You didn't tell me. I didn't want to bother you. Lena. His voice held a warning. Tell me next time. Next time? I couldn't even process that before he stepped closer to me. Eyes dark, but not unkind. He doesn't come here, Adrian said. Not to you. Not near this building. He doesn't know I'm here, I said quickly. He'll probably go to my apartment door. Adrian's jaw tightened. He took out his phone, dialed a number, and spoke without breaking eye contact with me. Marco. Front entrance. Today. I want eyes on every person who steps inside. Especially men. Call me the second anyone asks for Alina Hart. A pause. Then a firm good. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Adrian, I began. You don't have to be afraid, he said gently. But I wasn't afraid of Ryan. I was afraid of how easily Adrian took control. How effortlessly he commanded people. How naturally he assumed responsibility for me. Someone he'd just met. Why are you doing this? I asked quietly. His expression changed, only slightly, but I felt it. You were standing in a hallway last night, he said. Cold, alone, tired, and still polite, still soft, still trying not to inconvenience anyone. He took a breath. People like you don't belong in fear. Heat crept into my chest. A strange warmth. A dangerous warmth. I swallowed. You don't even know me. I know enough. My pulse quickened in my throat. He stepped closer, not touching me, but near enough that I felt the air shift, warm with his presence. Let me help you today, he said. We'll go to your apartment, get your lock changed, retrieve anything you need. You won't deal with this alone. There was something final about the way he said it. Something that didn't allow argument. I nodded slowly. Okay. Good. He gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Finish your breakfast. Then we leave. But as I lifted my fork again, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything, every step, every breath was taking me deeper into a life I didn't understand. A life centered around a man who was far more dangerous and far more gentle than anyone had ever been with me. I didn't know it then, but stepping out of that guest room was the moment things truly shifted. Because from that day forward, nothing would remain simple. Nothing would remain safe. Nothing would remain the same. Not with a man like Adrian Vescari standing beside me. The moment we stepped out of the penthouse, I felt it. A shift in the atmosphere. Subtle, but real. Like invisible eyes had turned toward us. The hallway was empty, yet the silence felt thick, almost expectant. Adrian walked a step ahead of me. His posture relaxed, but alert. His hand stayed casually at his side. Yet something about the way he moved made me think he could draw a weapon in less than a second if he had to. I wrapped my arms around myself as we approached the elevator. Does it always feel like this up here? I whispered. Like what? He asked without turning. Like the air is watching. A faint sound, maybe almost a laugh, escaped him. Good instinct. Oh, great. So it's not just me hallucinating. No, he said. This floor has certain precautions. Precautions. Right. Totally normal word for a residential building. He pressed the elevator button, and the doors opened instantly, as if it had been waiting. We stepped inside, and I felt the weight of the penthouse disappear behind the closing doors. Not in a relieving way. In a way that made the rest of the building feel somehow smaller, less protected. We'll check the hallway first, Adrian said as we descended. If your ex is there, stay behind me. Adrian, he's not dangerous, I insisted. His head turned just slightly. Everyone is dangerous when they're desperate. I swallowed, not arguing. When the elevator doors opened on my floor, Adrian stepped out first, scanning the hallway with a quick, practiced sweep of his eyes. Empty. Just my apartment door. Just the familiar beige carpet. Just the quiet hum of the old heater vent above. No one's been here recently, he said. How do you know? I asked. He pointed to the thin layer of dust on my doormat. No footprints except yours. I blinked. I hadn't even thought to look. He stepped toward my door and looked at the lock, his jaw tightening. He used this key recently. I frowned. How can you tell? The scratches. His fingertip brushed near the metal. Fresh. Less than a day old. My breath hitched. Ryan had been here. Late at night. While I was asleep in Adrian's penthouse. I felt sick. Adrian's voice softened. You're safe now. I didn't think he'd actually come, I whispered. He did, Adrian said. And he won't again. Before I could ask what that meant, he took out his phone. Marco. Door 4B. I want someone here within 10 minutes to replace the entire lock system. Not the basic model. The reinforced one. A pause. Yes, that one. He ended the call and turned to me. You live alone, he asked. Yes. No roommates? No boyfriend. The word boyfriend stuck strangely in my chest, as if he needed to confirm something specific. No, I said quietly. No one. For a moment, something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Then he nodded and stepped aside. Go in. I'll check first. I started to protest, but he gently touched my arm. Barely a brush of his fingers, yet it silenced me completely. His touch was warm, grounding, dangerously reassuring. He entered first, scanning each corner with the precision of someone who'd done it many times before. It took him less than 30 seconds. It's clear, he said. You can come in. I stepped inside, and a wave of embarrassment crashed through me. My apartment looked small, crowded, plain, a mismatched sofa, a half-dead plant, laundry basket in the corner, a chipped mug on the coffee table, and none of it looked like it belonged in the same world as the penthouse I'd slept in. You don't have to stay, I blurted, suddenly self-conscious. You've already done so much. He ignored that completely and walked to the window, checking the lock there too. How long have you lived here? Almost 2 years. It's quiet, he said. That's one word for it. His gaze swept the room again, assessing everything. Not judging, just analyzing like he was mentally mapping the space, searching for vulnerabilities. Does your ex still have things in here? He asked. Some, I admitted, but I never bothered throwing them out. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly. Why not? I guess I thought if I ignored them long enough, they'd disappear on their own. Things don't disappear on their own, he said gently. People don't either. I looked away, suddenly too exposed. He didn't push. Instead, he walked to the small table near the door and picked up a photo I tried to hide under papers. It was me, 3 years ago, laughing with my friends at a picnic. "You look happy here," he said. "I was trying," I replied. His eyes lifted to mine. "You should try again." My breath caught. His tone wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't playful. It was something deeper, something protective, something that saw more than I wanted it to. Before I could reply, a knock sounded at the door. Adrian snapped into focus instantly, alert, poised, deadly calm. "That'll be Marco," he said. "Stay behind me." He opened the door and a man, huge, broad-shouldered, dressed in black, nodded respectfully. "Boss, boss." The word echoed in my mind like a dropped glass. Adrian stepped aside, changed the lock, reinforced the frame. Marco got to work immediately, and Adrian guided me into the kitchen, further from the noise. "Adrian," I whispered. "He called you." "Yes," he cut in gently. "I know. So you're really a man with responsibilities." His tone was final. "Leave it at that for now." I swallowed. "Are you doing this for all your neighbors? Or am I just exceptionally helpless?" His eyes locked onto mine. "I'm doing this because someone walked into my penthouse last night wearing fear like a coat." My breath stilled. "And because," he continued softly, "you didn't deserve to spend the night alone in a hallway." A warmth spread through my chest so slowly it hurt. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. 10 minutes later, Marco finished installing the new lock, a heavy, reinforced one with a steel frame and a digital keypad. Adrian stepped forward. "Thank you." Marco nodded. "Call if you need anything else." When he left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Adrian turned toward me, the morning light behind him creating a soft halo on his shoulders. "You won't be locked out again," he said. "Not in this building. Not while I'm here." Something in his voice, something low, warm, and fierce, made my entire world tilt. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Instead, he stepped closer. "Lena," he said quietly, "I'm not asking you to trust me. Not yet. But I am telling you this." His hand lifted, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, and he brushed a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "I will never let anything happen to you." A pulse of heat shot through me. Fear and safety tangled together. Something new awakening inside me. "Why?" I whispered. He held my gaze, and in that moment, the world felt impossibly still. "Because last night changed more than you think." I didn't understand the meaning then, but I would. Soon. Dangerously soon. For the rest of the morning, I moved through my apartment in a strange haze, half in my old world, half in Adrian's. Every surface felt different now, as if last night had stretched a thin line between who I'd been and who I was becoming. A version of me who wasn't afraid. A version who believed someone powerful could stand between me and the things that scared me. A version who trusted a man she barely knew. By noon, the new lock was installed, the keypad programmed, and Adrian had checked every window, every hinge, every possible entry point 3 times. He moved through the space like he was memorizing it, like he was building a map in his head. "Now," he said, dusting his hands, "show me anything else in here that belongs to him." His voice was steady, uncompromising, deadly calm. I swallowed. "Like what?" "Anything that ties you to someone who doesn't respect you," he said simply. He crept up my neck. "That's a broad category." "Then this will be quick," he said dryly. I tried not to smile, but it happened anyway. He saw, and the faintest flicker of warmth crossed his eyes. I led him to the small cardboard box shoved behind my sofa, the one I'd avoided for months. Inside were remnants of a life I no longer wanted. A hoodie, 2 old notebooks, a watch he lent me once and never asked back for, a tangle of charging cables, a cheap cologne bottle I hated, an envelope of photos. Adrian crouched beside me. "This everything?" "Yes." He closed the box gently. "Do you want to throw it out?" I hesitated. I don't know." His voice softened, not pitying, just patient. "You don't have to know. Let me take care of it." "Take care of it?" Those words sent a faint shiver through me. "Adrian, what does take care of it mean in your world?" He paused. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Not small, not hidden. A real, slow curve of his mouth that transformed his whole face. It means I'll drop it in the building's disposal room, he said. Not everything is ominous, Lena. I exhaled, half relieved, half embarrassed. Okay, good to know. Still, there was something in his eyes, a glint, a shadow, that told me not everything in his world wasn't ominous. He stood and lifted the box with one hand like it weighed nothing. I'll return in a minute. Don't open the door for anyone else. Understand? I'm not 5, I muttered. He stopped in the doorway, turning just enough to meet my eyes. I know, he said, but last night made you my responsibility. My breath caught. Responsibility? Or something more? I didn't get to ask because he disappeared down the hallway. He returned faster than I expected. I was leaning against the kitchen counter, trying to calm the twisted knot of emotion sitting beneath my ribs when the keypad clicked and the door opened. Adrian stepped inside with the same quiet command he carried everywhere. Done, he said simply. Did you burn it? I teased. He arched an eyebrow. Do you want me to? No. I laughed. But my laughter faded when he stepped closer, his expression shifting into something unreadable. Good, he said quietly. A pulse of heat fluttered beneath my skin. He reached up, slowly, always giving me the chance to pull away, and brushed a piece of dust from my shoulder. The touch lingered half a second too long. Feel better now, he asked. I think so. Good, he murmured. You should. Something about the way he looked at me in that moment made my heartbeat trip, like he was measuring a choice inside himself. A choice he wasn't sure he should make. But before anything more could be said, my phone buzzed again. Ryan. Of course. I groaned under my breath and picked it up. Ryan, I saw your door. What the hell did you change the lock for? Who are you hiding from? We need to talk. Stop being dramatic and call me. My stomach twisted. Adrian saw my expression and his eyes darkened. Let me see. I handed him the phone without thinking. He read the message, jaw tightening. Then he set the phone down slowly, deliberately. Does he often speak to you like that? He asked. Yes, I whispered. He thinks I owe him answers. You don't owe him anything, Adrian said, voice sharp as steel. And he will not come here again. Adrian. No, his voice softened but didn't weaken. No more excuses for men who try to control you. I swallowed hard. What are you going to do? He studied me with dangerous calm. What do you want me to do? The question stunned me, because it wasn't a threat. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was an offer. A choice. My choice. I just want him to leave me alone, I said quietly. That's all. Adrian nodded. I can do that. What does that mean? It means, he said, I will make sure he understands. That didn't clarify anything. Not even close. But I didn't push. And he didn't explain. And somehow that felt okay. We stood in silence for a few seconds, the afternoon light stretching across the floor, painting everything in warm gold. Then Adrian exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. You should come upstairs again, he said. Just for a while. Until things settle. I blinked. You want me to go back to the penthouse? Yes. Why? His gaze held mine. Because you're safer there. Something unspoken passed between us. A tether, thin but real, forming quietly between our lives. I nodded. Let me grab my bag, I whispered. He watched me with a rare softness as I moved across the room. When I returned to the door, he was already waiting. Ready, he asked. Yeah. He stepped out first, scanning the hallway again before motioning for me to follow. As the elevator doors closed behind us, a strange realization settled over me. This wasn't temporary anymore. This wasn't just one night or one morning. Something had shifted. Something irreversible. I looked at him, the dark hair, the sharp features, the quiet power that clung to him like a second skin. Adrian, I said softly. He turned his head slightly. Yes. Why are you doing all this for me? His eyes lingered on mine in a silence thick enough to pulse. Then, in a voice low enough to raise goosebumps, he said, because last night, when you asked for help, you didn't look at me like I was a monster. My breath stilled. His gaze dropped briefly to my lips, only for a fraction of a second before lifting again. And I don't get that often, he added. The elevator chimed at the penthouse floor. The doors opened. He held out his hand, not touching me, just offering. Come, he said softly. Let me take care of you. Just for today. And I stepped forward, because last night had changed everything. And deep down, I already knew. This was only the beginning.